The fluorescent lights in Metro grocery store buzzed overhead as Maria Williams pushed her cleaning cart down the cereal aisle. At 52, she had been working as a cleaning lady for various businesses in downtown Chicago for nearly 15 years. Her dark hands, weathered from years of scrubbing and polishing, gripped the cart handle as she made her way through the store during her evening shift. Maria had seen it all in her years of cleaning. Rich people who treated her like she was invisible. Middle-class families who were polite but distant. Poor folks who understood her struggle and always offered a kind word. But tonight, something was different. Something was about to happen that would change not just her evening, but potentially someone's entire life. The grocery store was quieter than usual for a Thursday evening. Most people had finished their shopping and gone home to their families. Maria preferred these quiet hours. It gave her time to think, to clean thoroughly, and to observe the few remaining customers without feeling rushed. As she rounded the corner near the dairy section, she noticed a man standing in front of the milk refrigerator. He was tall, maybe in his early 30s, with brown hair that looked like he had been running his hands through it. He wore a wrinkled button-down shirt and jeans that had seen better days. But what caught Maria's attention wasn't his appearance. It was the way he was standing. The man was completely still, staring at the milk cartons like they held the secrets of the universe. His shoulders were slumped, and even from a distance, Maria could see the tension in his body. In his right hand, he held a crumpled piece of paper that looked like a receipt. Maria had developed a sixth sense about people over the years. She could tell when someone was having a good day, a bad day, or the worst day of their life. This man was definitely not having a good day. She continued cleaning, moving closer to where he stood. As she got nearer, she could hear him talking to himself under his breath. He was counting something, but the numbers weren't making sense. 1550 minus 1240. That's 310. But the milk is 467. He muttered, looking from the receipt to the milk and back again. Maria pretended to clean the shelves nearby, but she was listening carefully. The man reached into his pocket and pulled out a handful of coins and a few crumpled dollar bills. He spread them out in his palm and started counting again. $2, $2.50, $3.15. His voice got quieter with each number. When he finished counting, his shoulders dropped even lower. Maria watched as he picked up a gallon of milk, looked at the price tag, and put it back down. Then he picked up a half gallon, checked the price, and shook his head. Finally, he picked up a quart of milk, the smallest size available. The man walked toward the self-checkout area, but then stopped halfway there. He looked at the quart of milk in his hand, then back at the dairy section. Maria could see him having some kind of internal debate. She had finished cleaning the area near the milk, but she found reasons to stay close. Something about this man's situation was tugging at her heart. She had raised 3 children as a single mother after her husband died in a construction accident 12 years ago. She knew what it looked like when someone was trying to stretch every dollar. The man walked back to the dairy section and stood in front of the milk again. This time, Maria was close enough to get a better look at him. He was younger than she had first thought, probably around 28 or 29. His clothes were clean but old. His shoes had been resoled at least once. Everything about him suggested someone who took care of what he had, but didn't have much to work with. What really caught her attention, though, was the look in his eyes. They weren't the tired eyes of someone who had given up. They were the determined eyes of someone who was fighting hard to keep going. Maria recognized that look because she had seen it in her own mirror many times. The man pulled out his phone and made a call. Maria tried not to listen, but the store was quiet, and sound carried. "Hey, buddy," he said in a gentle voice. "Daddy's at the store getting milk for breakfast tomorrow. I know you really wanted the chocolate kind, but we're going to have regular milk this time, okay?" There was a pause while he listened to whoever was on the other end of the call. I know. Maybe next week we can get chocolate milk. Right now, we need to make sure we have regular milk for your cereal." Another pause. Maria could hear a small voice coming through the phone, but she couldn't make out the words. "Yes, I promise I'll be home soon. Mrs. Rodriguez is watching you, right? Good. Be good for her, and I'll see you in a little bit." The man hung up the phone and stared at the quart of milk in his hand. Then, he did something that broke Maria's heart. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and seemed to be giving himself a pep talk. You can do this, David, he whispered to himself. It's just for a few days until payday. Emma will understand. Maria realized she was witnessing something very private. This man, David, was trying to figure out how to buy milk for his child with the little money he had. The mention of payday suggested he was working, but probably living paycheck to paycheck. She watched as David walked to the self-checkout machine. He scanned the quart of milk and waited for the total to appear on the screen. When it did, his face fell. Even the small quart of milk was more than he had counted on. David started feeding coins into the machine, counting carefully. Maria could see him getting more frustrated with each coin. When he had put in all his coins, the screen still showed that he owed money. He pulled out his dollar bills and fed them into the machine one at a time. Maria watched his face as he realized he was still short. The machine was asking for 37 more cents that he simply didn't have. David stood there for a moment, looking at the screen. Then, he looked around the store, probably hoping no one was watching his embarrassment. Maria quickly turned away and pretended to be busy cleaning. When she looked back, David was taking the coins out of the change slot, preparing to cancel the transaction. His face was red, and Maria could see that this was more than just an inconvenience for him. This was a moment that was challenging his dignity as a father and provider. Maria had been in similar situations. She remembered standing in a checkout line with her own children, counting and recounting money, hoping she had enough for groceries. She remembered the shame of having to put items back because she couldn't afford everything in her cart. She remembered the look in her children's eyes when she had to tell them they couldn't have something they wanted because money was tight. But she also remembered the kindness of strangers who had helped her in those moments. The cashier who had accidentally given her a discount. The person behind her in line who paid for her groceries and disappeared before she could thank them properly. The neighbor who brought over extra food, claiming they had cooked too much. Those acts of kindness had kept her going during the hardest times. They had restored her faith in humanity and reminded her that she wasn't alone in her struggles. More importantly, they had taught her that when she was in a position to help someone else, she should do it without hesitation. Maria made a decision. She finished cleaning the area where she was working, then slowly made her way toward the self-checkout area. David was still standing there, looking defeated and trying to figure out what to do next. As she got closer, she could see that he was close to tears. This wasn't just about milk. This was about being a father who couldn't provide something as basic as milk for his child. This was about the fear of disappointing someone who depended on him. This was about the weight of responsibility and the fear of failure. Maria had cleaned enough offices and stores to know that most people preferred to handle their business privately. She didn't want to embarrass David or make him feel worse than he already did. But she also couldn't walk away from someone who clearly needed help. She approached the self-checkout area and began cleaning the machine next to the one David was using. She wanted to be close enough to help if the opportunity presented itself, but she didn't want to intrude. David seemed to notice her presence, and he looked even more embarrassed. He was probably hoping that no one had witnessed his struggle with the payment. "Excuse me," Maria said gently, not looking directly at him, but speaking loud enough for him to hear. "I couldn't help but notice you're having some trouble with the machine. Those things can be tricky sometimes." David looked up at her, and she could see gratitude and embarrassment warring in his expression. "Oh, it's not the machine," he said quietly. I'm a little short on cash tonight." Maria nodded understandingly. "We've all been there," she said simply. "How much do you need?" David hesitated. Maria could see him debating whether to accept help from a stranger. Pride was clearly fighting with necessity. 37 cents, he said finally, his voice barely audible. Maria reached into her apron pocket without hesitation. She always kept some change there for the bus and for small emergencies. She pulled out 2 quarters and handed them to David. "Here you go," she said with a warm smile. "Don't worry about paying me back. We all help each other when we can." David stared at the quarters in his hand like they were made of gold. When he looked up at Maria, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You don't know what this means to me." Maria felt her own eyes getting misty. "I think I do," she said softly. "I've been where you are. It gets better." David fed the quarters into the machine, and it finally accepted his payment. The receipt printed, and He took his quart of milk from the bagging area. But, instead of leaving immediately, he turned to face Maria. "I'm David," he said, extending his hand. "David Chun." "Maria Williams," she replied, shaking his hand. "Nice to meet you, David." "I have a daughter," David said, as if he needed to explain why the milk was so important. "Emma. She's 5, and she loves cereal for breakfast. I just started a new job last week, and I won't get paid until Friday. I thought I had enough for milk, but I miscalculated." Maria's heart went out to him even more. A single father, new job, trying to make ends meet until payday. She understood that struggle completely. "How old did you say your daughter is?" Maria asked. 5. She just started kindergarten last month. She's so smart and funny, and she deserves so much better than. David trailed off, looking around the store. "Then what?" Maria asked gently. "Then a father who can't even buy her milk without needing help from strangers," David said, his voice heavy with self-judgment. Maria looked at this young man and saw so much of herself from years past. The guilt, the fear, the constant worry about whether she was doing enough for her children. She remembered feeling like a failure when she couldn't provide everything her kids wanted or needed. "Let me tell you something, David," Maria said, her voice firm but kind. "The fact that you're here, trying to buy milk for your daughter even when money is tight, tells me you're a good father. The fact that you called her to explain about the chocolate milk tells me you respect her enough to be honest. The fact that you're working and trying to provide tells me you're doing your best. That's all any parent can do." David listened to her words, and Maria could see some of the tension leaving his shoulders. "It's just hard sometimes," he said, "being responsible for someone else when you're barely keeping your own head above water." "I know," Maria said. "I raised 3 kids on my own after my husband died. There were plenty of nights when I lay awake wondering if I was doing enough, if I was giving them what they needed. But you know what I learned?" David shook his head, waiting for her answer. "I learned that kids don't need perfect parents. They need parents who love them and who keep trying. From what I can see, you've got both of those covered." David smiled for the first time since Maria had noticed him. It was a small smile, but it reached his eyes. "Thank you," he said again. "Not just for the money, but for understanding." Maria waved off his thanks. "We all need help sometimes. The trick is recognizing when we can help someone else and doing it." David nodded, clutching his quart of milk like it was precious cargo. "I should get home. Emma's waiting, and I promised I'd be back soon." "Of course," Maria said. "Take care of yourself, David. And remember, you're doing better than you think you are." As David walked toward the exit, Maria felt a warmth in her chest that she hadn't experienced in a long time. It wasn't just the satisfaction of helping someone in need. It was something deeper than that. It was the recognition of a connection between 2 people who understood struggle and resilience. She watched through the store's large windows as David walked to an old sedan parked under a streetlight. The car had seen better days, but it was clean and well-maintained. Everything about David suggested someone who took pride in what he had, even when what he had wasn't much. Maria went back to her cleaning, but her mind kept wandering to David and his daughter Emma. She found herself wondering about their story. What had led to David being a single father? Where was Emma's mother? How long had they been struggling financially? What was David's new job? More than that, she found herself hoping that things would get easier for them. She knew from experience that life had a way of testing people when they were already at their breaking point. But she also knew that sometimes unexpected help came from the most unlikely places. As she finished her shift at the grocery store, Maria couldn't shake the feeling that her encounter with David was more than just a random act of kindness. There was something about him that reminded her of herself at that age, determined, scared, doing everything possible to be a good parent despite difficult circumstances. She had learned over the years to trust her instincts about people, and her instincts were telling her that David Chun was someone special, someone who deserved more help than 37 cents for milk, someone whose story was just beginning, and someone who might need a friend more than he realized. 3 days later, Maria was back at Metro grocery store for her regular evening shift. She had thought about David and Emma several times since Thursday night, wondering how they were doing and whether David's new job was working out. She found herself scanning the store during her cleaning rounds, half hoping and half expecting to see him again. It was Sunday evening, and the store was busier than usual. Families were doing their weekly shopping, stocking up for the week ahead. Maria watched the customers as she worked, noting the different dynamics she observed. Some families moved through the store with military precision, clearly working from detailed lists and budgets. Others wandered more casually, adding items to their carts without seeming to worry about the total cost. Maria had always been fascinated by the stories she could piece together just by watching people shop. The young couple carefully comparing prices and buying generic brands, probably newlyweds or new parents watching their budget. The elderly man buying single servings of everything, likely widowed and still adjusting to cooking for one. The woman with 3 kids who seemed frazzled and kept checking her phone, probably a working mother trying to balance everything. Around 7 o'clock, Maria was cleaning near the produce section when she saw a familiar figure walk through the automatic doors. David Chin looked better than he had on Thursday night. His clothes were still modest, but they were freshly pressed, and he carried himself with more confidence. He had a small girl with him who could only be Emma. Emma was beautiful. She had her father's dark hair, but it was longer and tied back in 2 neat pigtails with bright pink hair ties. She wore a simple yellow dress that looked like it had been carefully chosen for a special occasion. But what struck Maria most about Emma was her energy. She skipped alongside her father, chattering excitedly about something Maria couldn't quite hear from her position across the store. Maria found herself smiling as she watched the father and daughter make their way into the store. David had a small list in his hand, and Emma was pointing at different displays with enthusiasm. There was something different about David's demeanor compared to Thursday night. He seemed lighter, more hopeful. As they moved through the store, Maria continued her cleaning while discreetly observing their shopping trip. David was clearly being more careful with his selections, but he wasn't displaying the same desperate tension she had witnessed 3 days earlier. Emma seemed oblivious to any financial constraints, pointing out items she found interesting with the unbridled curiosity of a 5-year-old. When they reached the cereal aisle, Maria positioned herself nearby, cleaning the shelves and listening to their conversation. "Can we get the one with the marshmallows, Daddy?" Emma asked, pointing to a colorful box on a high shelf. David looked at the cereal she had indicated, then at the price tag. Maria saw him doing quick mental calculations. "That one's pretty expensive, sweetheart," he said gently. "How about we look at some of these other ones?" Emma considered this seriously, then pointed to a different box. "What about that one with the honey bear?" David checked the price and nodded. "That one's perfect. Good choice, Em." Emma beamed with pride at having made a good choice. Maria could see that David was teaching his daughter about making decisions while being mindful of their budget, but he was doing it in a way that made Emma feel empowered rather than restricted. They continued through the store, and Maria found herself impressed by David's parenting style. He was patient with Emma's questions, he included her in decisions when appropriate, and he maintained a positive attitude even when they had to choose less expensive options. When they reached the dairy section, Maria felt her heart skip a beat. This was where she had first encountered David's struggle, and she wondered how this trip would be different. David picked up a gallon of milk, not the quart he had been forced to choose Thursday night. Emma clapped her hands excitedly. "That's a big one, Daddy. That means lots of cereal." David laughed, and the sound carried across the store. "That's right, sweetheart. We'll have plenty of milk for cereal this week." Maria felt a warm glow of satisfaction. Clearly, David's new job was already making a difference in their lives. He was able to buy the larger size of milk, which was actually more economical in the long run. She was happy to see that her small act of kindness on Thursday had been just a temporary bridge to better times. As David and Emma made their way toward the checkout area, Maria noticed that David had spotted her cleaning near the customer service counter. Their eyes met across the store, and David's face lit up with recognition and gratitude. He said something to Emma, then guided her toward where Maria was working. As they approached, Maria could see that Emma was curious about this woman her father wanted to talk to. "Maria," David said warmly as they reached her. "I was hoping I might see you here again." "Hello, David," Maria replied, setting down her cleaning cloth. "And you must be Emma." Emma looked up at Maria with bright, intelligent eyes. "Are you the nice lady Daddy told me about?" Maria looked at David with a raised eyebrow. "Oh, Did he tell you about me? David looked slightly embarrassed. I might have mentioned that a very kind lady helped us out the other day. Emma nodded seriously. Daddy said you helped him buy milk when he didn't have enough money. He said you were an angel. Maria felt her eyes getting misty. Well, that's very sweet of him to say. But I think your daddy is pretty special too. I know, Emma said matter-of-factly. He makes the best pancakes in the whole world. And he reads me 3 stories every night. And he lets me help him fold the laundry. Maria smiled at the child's obvious adoration for her father. He sounds like a very good daddy. He is, Emma confirmed. Then, with the directness that only children possess, she asked, Why are you cleaning the store? Don't you have a house to clean? Emma, David said quickly. That's not a polite question. But Maria laughed. It's okay. It's a fair question. She looked down at Emma. I do have a house, but it's very small. So I clean other places to earn money to pay for my house and food and all the things I need. Emma nodded as if this made perfect sense. Like how Daddy goes to work so we can have our apartment and food and milk? Exactly like that, Maria confirmed. David looked at Maria with appreciation. Thank you for explaining that to her. She's at the age where she asks about everything. That's what smart kids do, Maria said. They ask questions to understand the world better. Emma seemed pleased to be called smart. I'm in kindergarten now, she announced proudly. Wow, kindergarten, Maria said with impressed enthusiasm. That's a big deal. Do you like school? I love it, Emma said. My teacher's name is Mrs. Patterson, and she has a fish tank in our classroom with real fish. And we get to use crayons every day. Maria found herself charmed by Emma's enthusiasm and innocence. The child was clearly bright and well-adjusted despite their financial struggles. David was doing an excellent job raising her. That sounds wonderful, Maria said. I bet you're learning lots of new things. I am. I can write my whole name now, and I know all the letters of the alphabet, and I can count to 100. That's very impressive, Maria said sincerely. David put his hand gently on Emma's shoulder. We should let Maria get back to her work, sweetheart. I'm sure she has lots to do. But Emma wasn't ready to end the conversation. Maria, do you have kids? I do, Maria said. I have 3 children, but they're all grown up now. They don't live with me anymore. Emma looked sad about this. Don't you miss them? I do miss them, Maria admitted. But I'm proud of them for being independent and having their own lives. That's what happens when kids grow up. They become adults and have their own adventures. Emma considered this seriously. When I grow up, I want to be a teacher like Mrs. Patterson, or maybe a doctor, or maybe someone who takes care of animals. Those are all wonderful choices, Maria said. I'm sure you'll be great at whatever you decide to do. David smiled down at his daughter. She changes her mind about what she wants to be when she grows up about 3 times a week. That's the beauty of being 5, Maria said. The whole world is full of possibilities. As they talked, Maria noticed other customers moving around them, going about their shopping. She was aware that she was technically working and shouldn't spend too much time chatting, but she found herself reluctant to end this conversation. There was something special about this father and daughter, and she enjoyed their company. David seemed to sense her dilemma. I don't want to get you in trouble with your supervisor, he said. But I did want to thank you again for Thursday night. That money you gave me might have been just 37 cents to you, but it meant the world to us. It was my pleasure, Maria said sincerely. I'm just glad I could help. David hesitated for a moment, then seemed to make a decision. Actually, I wanted to ask you something. Emma and I are going to have pancakes for breakfast tomorrow. It's kind of our Sunday tradition. I was wondering if you'd like to join us. Maria was surprised by the invitation. In all her years of helping people, she had rarely been invited to become part of their lives beyond the initial encounter. Most people were grateful, but preferred to maintain their privacy. That's very kind of you, Maria said carefully. But I wouldn't want to intrude on your special tradition. You wouldn't be intruding, David said quickly. I mean, obviously you don't have to, but we'd both love to have you. Wouldn't we, Em? Emma nodded enthusiastically. Yes. And you could see our apartment, and I could show you my room, and Daddy could make his special pancakes with blueberries. Maria looked at these 2 people who had come into her life just a few days ago, and felt something stirring in her heart that she hadn't experienced in years. When her own children were young, Her life had been so focused on survival and providing for them that she had rarely had time to form meaningful friendships. After they grew up and moved away, she had settled into a routine of work and solitude that felt safe, but sometimes lonely. "Are you sure?" she asked David. "I don't want to impose." "You wouldn't be imposing," David said firmly. "After what you did for us, it's the least we can offer. Besides, Emma hasn't stopped talking about wanting to meet the angel lady who helped us." Emma tugged on Maria's apron. "Please come have pancakes with us. Daddy makes them in fun shapes sometimes." Maria felt her resistance crumbling. When was the last time someone had invited her to breakfast? When was the last time she had spent a Sunday morning somewhere other than her small apartment, watching old movies and doing laundry? "Well," she said slowly, "I suppose I could come for a little while." Emma cheered, and David smiled broadly. "Great. We usually eat around 9 o'clock. Is that too early?" "That's perfect," Maria said. "I'm an early riser anyway." David pulled out his phone. "Let me give you my address and phone number, just in case you need directions or anything changes." As David entered his contact information into Maria's phone, she found herself feeling nervous and excited at the same time. It had been so long since she had made new friends that she had almost forgotten how it felt to anticipate spending time with people she enjoyed. "We live in the Riverside Apartments on Oak Street," David explained. "It's not fancy, but it's home. Apartment 3B. Maria knew the area. It wasn't the nicest part of town, but it wasn't the worst either. The kind of place where working families lived when they were doing their best with limited resources. "I'll find it," she assured him. Emma was practically bouncing with excitement. "This is going to be so fun. We never have guests for pancakes." David looked at his daughter with a mixture of love and slight embarrassment. "We don't entertain much," he explained to Maria. "It's usually just the two of us." Maria understood. When money was tight, having guests could feel like a luxury you couldn't afford. But she also understood the loneliness that could come from always being just the two of us. "Well, I'm honored to be your first pancake guest," she said. They finished exchanging contact information, and David and Emma continued with their shopping. Maria watched them go, feeling a flutter of anticipation about the morning ahead. As she went back to her cleaning, she found herself thinking about what she might bring to breakfast. She didn't want to show up empty-handed, but she also didn't want to bring something expensive that might make David uncomfortable. The rest of her shift passed quickly. Maria found herself distracted, thinking about David and Emma and looking forward to learning more about their lives. She had always been curious about people, but it had been a long time since she had the opportunity to move beyond curiosity into actual friendship. Sunday morning arrived gray and drizzly, but Maria woke up with more energy than she had felt in months. She had spent Saturday evening thinking about what to bring to David and Emma's pancake breakfast. Finally, settling on a small container of fresh strawberries she had bought at the farmer's market and a jar of homemade preserves her neighbor had given her. Maria lived in a small one-bedroom apartment in a building that had seen better days, but she had made it comfortable with second-hand furniture, plants from the grocery store clearance rack, and photographs of her children. Her morning routine was usually simple and solitary: coffee, toast, and the Sunday paper. But today felt different. Today she was going to share breakfast with new friends. She chose her clothes carefully, wanting to look nice without appearing to try too hard. She settled on a navy blue dress that her daughter had bought her for Christmas 2 years ago, and her most comfortable walking shoes. Looking in the mirror, she felt satisfied with her appearance and excited about the morning ahead. The bus ride to Oak Street took about 20 minutes, and Maria used the time to think about what she might learn about David and Emma's life. She was curious about David's new job, about how long they had lived alone together, and about Emma's personality beyond the bright enthusiasm she had displayed at the store. Riverside Apartments was a 3-story brick building with a small courtyard and numbered parking spaces. It looked well-maintained, but modest, the kind of place where young families and older singles lived when they needed something affordable but decent. Maria found apartment 3B on the 3rd floor and knocked gently on the door. She could hear movement inside, followed by Emma's voice calling, "Daddy, she's here. The nice lady is here." David opened the door with a warm smile. and Maria was struck by how different he looked in his own environment. He wore jeans and a comfortable sweater, and his hair was slightly messy in a way that suggested he had been cooking. Most importantly, he looked relaxed and happy. "Maria, come in, please. We're so glad you could make it." Emma appeared at her father's side, wearing pajamas with cartoon characters and fuzzy slippers. Her hair was down around her shoulders, and her face was bright with excitement. "You came. You really came," Emma said, grabbing Maria's hand and pulling her into the apartment. "I was afraid maybe you wouldn't really come." "I promised I would," Maria said, "and I always keep my promises." The apartment was small but welcoming. The living room contained a couch that had been covered with a colorful throw, a coffee table made from an old trunk, and shelves built from wooden crates and boards. Everything was clean and carefully arranged to make the most of the limited space. What impressed Maria most was how warm and homey it felt despite the obvious budget constraints. "Your home is lovely," Maria said sincerely. "It's not much," David said, looking around as if seeing it through her eyes. "But we've tried to make it comfortable." "Home isn't about how much things cost," Maria said. "It's about the love that fills the space. This feels very much like a home." Emma tugged on Maria's dress. "Do you want to see my room, Daddy? And I painted it pink. And I have a bookshelf with all my books." "I'd love to see your room," Maria said. Emma led her down a short hallway to a small bedroom that had been transformed into a little girl's paradise. The walls were painted a soft pink, and there were white curtains with tiny flowers at the window. A twin bed was covered with a patchwork quilt that looked handmade, and stuffed animals were arranged carefully on the pillow. But what caught Maria's attention was the bookshelf David had mentioned. It was clearly homemade, painted white to match the curtains, and filled with children's books. Some looked new, but many appeared to be from library sales or secondhand stores. It was obvious that David prioritized his daughter's education and reading. "Daddy built that shelf for me," Emma said proudly. "And he reads me 3 books every night before bed." 3 whole books?" Maria asked with exaggerated amazement. "That's a lot of reading." Emma nodded seriously. "Sometimes they're short books, but sometimes they're long ones. Daddy does different voices for all the characters." Maria looked around the room and felt a deep respect for David. Everything in this space had been chosen and arranged with Emma's happiness and development in mind. The furniture might be secondhand and the decorations homemade, but the room radiated love and attention. "This is a very special room," Maria told Emma. "Your daddy did a wonderful job making it perfect for you." Emma beamed with pride. "I helped pick the paint color. Daddy said I could choose any color I wanted, and I chose pink because it's happy." "Pink is definitely a happy color," Maria agreed. They returned to the main area of the apartment, where Maria could smell something delicious coming from the small kitchen. David was standing at the stove, flipping pancakes in a skillet that looked like it had been well-used and well-loved. "Perfect timing," David said as they entered the kitchen area. "The pancakes are almost ready. I hope you like blueberries." "I love blueberries," Maria said, setting her bag on the counter. "I brought some strawberries and homemade preserves, if you'd like to try them." Emma's eyes widened. "Strawberries? I love strawberries. Can we have them with the pancakes?" "Of course we can," David said. "That was very thoughtful of you, Maria. You really didn't need to bring anything." "I wanted to contribute something," Maria said. "Besides, pancakes are even better with fresh fruit." As David finished cooking, Maria looked around the small kitchen. Like the rest of the apartment, it was modest but functional. The appliances were older but clean, and everything was organized efficiently. She noticed a bulletin board on the wall covered with Emma's artwork, a grocery list written in David's careful handwriting, and a work schedule that suggested David worked some kind of shift job. "Can I help with anything?" Maria asked. "You can help me set the table," Emma announced, already pulling plates from a cabinet. "I know where everything goes." Maria followed Emma's lead, helping to arrange plates, napkins, and silverware on a small dining table that looked like it might have come from a garage sale, but had been refinished with care. Emma chattered about school while they worked, telling Maria about her teacher, her classmates, and the fish tank she had mentioned at the store. "Mrs. Patterson says I'm a good reader for kindergarten," Emma said as she placed forks beside the plates. She says I might be able to read first-grade books soon. That's wonderful, Maria said. Do you have a favorite book? Emma thought seriously about this question. I like the one about the mouse who gives cookies. And I like the one about the caterpillar who eats everything. But my most favorite is the one Daddy reads about the little girl who's brave. David brought a platter of golden pancakes to the table. She's talking about The Paper Bag Princess. It's about a princess who saves the prince instead of the other way around. That sounds like a very good story, Maria said. I think girls should know they can be brave and save people too. Emma nodded emphatically. That's what Daddy says. He says girls can do anything boys can do, and sometimes they can do it better. David looked slightly embarrassed. I might be raising a feminist. Maria laughed. The world needs more feminists. Emma's lucky to have a father who teaches her to believe in herself. They sat down to breakfast, and Maria was impressed by the pancakes. They were light and fluffy, with blueberries distributed evenly throughout. David had clearly perfected his recipe through practice. These are amazing, Maria said after her first bite. Where did you learn to cook like this? David looked pleased by the compliment. Trial and error mostly. When Emma was younger, I realized I needed to figure out how to make meals that she would actually eat. Pancakes were one of our first successes. Daddy burned a lot of food when I was little, Emma added helpfully. But he got better. Thanks for that endorsement, David said with a laugh. Nothing like a 5-year-old to keep you humble. As they ate, Maria learned more about their story. David had been working in construction before his new job, but an injury to his back had made it impossible to continue that kind of physical labor. He had spent several months looking for work that he could do while being home in the evenings for Emma. I finally found a position doing inventory and customer service for a medical supply company, David explained. The pay isn't as good as construction, but the hours are regular, and I have benefits for the first time in years. That must be a relief, Maria said. It is. The hardest part about being a single parent isn't just the money, although that's definitely challenging. It's the constant worry about what happens if something goes wrong. What if I get hurt and can't work? What if Emma gets sick and I can't afford medical care? Having insurance again makes me feel like we have a safety net. Maria understood that feeling well. When my children were young, I used to lie awake at night making contingency plans for every possible disaster. It's exhausting to be the only person responsible for everything. Exactly, David said. Don't get me wrong. I love being Emma's dad, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. But sometimes I wish there was someone else to help carry the load, you know. Emma, who had been listening to this conversation while carefully cutting her pancakes into small pieces, looked up at her father. But we help each other, right, Daddy? I help with laundry, and I can make my own cereal, and I always put my toys away. David's expression softened as he looked at his daughter. You're absolutely right, sweetheart. We're a good team. Maria watched this interaction with admiration. Despite their challenges, David and Emma had clearly built a strong partnership. Emma might be only 5, but she already understood that families worked together and supported each other. Tell me about your children, David said to Maria. Do they live here in the city? Maria set down her fork and smiled. My oldest, Marcus, lives in Atlanta. He's a nurse at a children's hospital. My daughter Keisha is in Seattle. She's a social worker. And my youngest, Jamal, is finishing his last year of college in California. Wow, David said. You must be really proud of them. I am, Maria said. But I also miss them terribly. When they were growing up, our house was always full of noise and activity and friends coming and going. Now it's just me and the silence. Emma looked concerned. Don't you have friends to visit you? Maria considered how to answer this honestly without sounding pathetic. I have people I'm friendly with at work and in my neighborhood, but I don't really have close friends. When you're busy raising children and working, you don't always have time to build those kinds of relationships. And then, when your children are grown, you realize you've gotten out of the habit. David nodded understandingly. I can see how that would happen. Right now, most of my relationships are with other parents from Emma's school or my coworkers. I don't really have time for much else. But now you have Maria, Emma announced. She can be our friend, and we can be her friends, and she doesn't have to be alone anymore. Both adults looked at Emma with surprise. Children, Maria reflected, had a way of cutting through complexity and getting straight to the heart of things. Well, David said carefully, if Maria wants to be our friend, we would certainly like that. But she might be too busy for us. Maria felt something warm spreading through her chest. When was the last time someone had asked her to be their friend? When was the last time she had felt wanted and included rather than just tolerated or overlooked? I would love to be your friend, she said to Emma, then looked at David. Both of your friend, if you'll have me. Emma clapped her hands excitedly. Yes, now we can have pancake breakfasts together, and you can come to my school play, and maybe you can teach me how to braid hair like yours. Maria reached over and touched her own hair, which she had twisted into a simple braid that morning. You want to learn how to braid? Daddy tries, but he's not very good at it, Emma said. His braids come out all crooked. Hey, David protested with mock indignation. My braids aren't that bad. Emma giggled. Yes, they are, Daddy. Remember the picture day when you tried to make my hair fancy, and it looked like a bird's nest? David covered his face with his hands in exaggerated shame. We agreed never to speak of picture day again. Maria laughed at their playful banter. This was what she had missed, the easy affection and teasing that happened between people who loved each other. Her own house had been full of this kind of interaction when her children were young. I would be happy to teach you how to braid, Maria told Emma. There are lots of different kinds of braids, simple ones, fancy ones, ones with ribbons. Emma's eyes lit up. Could you teach me today? Right now? Maria looked at David, who nodded. If you don't mind spending a little more time with us, I think that would be wonderful. I've been dreading the day she asks for something more complicated than a ponytail. They finished breakfast, and David insisted on cleaning up while Maria and Emma went to the bathroom to work on braiding. Emma stood on a small stool in front of the mirror while Maria gently combed through her hair and showed her how to separate it into sections. The secret to a good braid, Maria explained as she worked, is to keep your sections even and your tension consistent. Like this, see how I'm crossing the pieces over each other? Emma watched intently in the mirror. It looks like you're weaving. That's exactly what braiding is, weaving hair instead of fabric. You're a smart girl to notice that. As Maria braided Emma's hair, she felt a deep sense of satisfaction. This was something she had done countless times for her own daughter, but it had been years since she had the opportunity to help a little girl get ready for her day. Emma's hair was soft and fine, and Maria found herself taking extra care to make the braid neat and pretty. There, she said when she finished. What do you think? Emma turned her head from side to side, admiring the braid in the mirror. It's perfect. It's the prettiest braid ever. David appeared in the doorway and whistled appreciatively. Wow, Em, you look beautiful. Maria, you have some serious skills. Practice, Maria said simply. I braided a lot of hair when my daughter was young. Emma hugged Maria around the waist. Thank you for making my hair pretty. Can you come back next Sunday and do it again? Maria looked at David over Emma's head. If your daddy doesn't mind having me as a regular guest, I'd love to come back. We would love that, David said sincerely. This has been the best Sunday morning we've had in a long time. As Maria gathered her things to leave, she realized that something significant had happened during this simple breakfast. She had started the morning as a stranger who had done a small favor for someone in need. She was ending it as a friend, someone who was wanted and welcomed into this little family's life. Emma walked her to the door, still touching her new braid proudly. Don't forget to come back next Sunday, she reminded Maria. And maybe you can bring more strawberries. I'll bring strawberries, Maria promised. And maybe I can teach you a French braid next time. A French braid? Emma gasped. That sounds fancy. Over the next month, Sunday morning pancakes became a cherished tradition for Maria, David, and Emma. Each week brought new conversations, new discoveries about each other, and a deepening friendship that surprised all three of them with its natural ease and mutual affection. Maria found herself looking forward to Sundays in a way she hadn't experienced in years. She would wake up early, choose her outfit carefully, and stop at the farmer's market to pick up fresh fruit or flowers for their breakfast table. David and Emma always welcomed her with genuine enthusiasm, and Emma's excitement about seeing Miss Maria never seemed to diminish. During these Sunday mornings, Maria learned more about David's story. His wife, Emma's mother, had died in a car accident when Emma was just 18 months old. David had been working 2 jobs at the time, trying to save money for a house, and, suddenly, found himself a single father with no extended family nearby to help. Those first few months were the hardest thing I've ever been through, David confided to Maria one Sunday while Emma was in her room getting dressed. I didn't know anything about taking care of a baby, and I was grieving Sarah while trying to figure out how to be both a mother and father to Emma. Maria listened with compassion, understanding the weight of his experience. How did you manage? She asked gently. Trial and error mostly. And the kindness of strangers, actually. Our neighbor Mrs. Rodriguez, the one who watches Emma sometimes, she basically taught me everything. How to change diapers, what to do when Emma was teething, how to braid hair. Well, sort of how to braid hair. Maria smiled at the reference to his ongoing struggle with Emma's hair. It sounds like you had some good people looking out for you. I did. And it taught me how important it is to accept help when it's offered, and to offer help when I can. Like you did that night at the grocery store. Over the weeks, Maria also shared more of her own story. She told David about her husband's death in a construction accident, about the years of working multiple cleaning jobs to support her children, about the pride she felt watching them succeed despite their humble beginnings. Marcus was the first person in our family to go to college, she told them one Sunday. I remember walking with him to the financial aid office, both of us nervous about whether he could afford it. The counselor looked at our paperwork and said Marcus qualified for grants and scholarships that would cover almost everything. I cried right there in that office. Emma, who had been listening while eating her pancakes, looked up seriously. Were they happy tears or sad tears? Happy tears, sweetheart. Sometimes people cry when they're very, very happy. Like when Daddy cried at my kindergarten graduation. David looked embarrassed. You noticed that? Of course I noticed, Emma said. You were trying to hide it, but I saw you wiping your eyes. Mrs. Rodriguez said it was because you were proud of me. She was right, David said. I was so proud I could barely contain myself. These Sunday mornings gave Maria insight into David's parenting philosophy and his deep devotion to Emma. She watched him patiently answer Emma's endless questions, include her in age-appropriate decisions, and consistently reinforce positive values and behaviors. Most impressively, she saw how he talked to Emma about difficult topics, like their financial struggles or her mother's death, with honesty but in ways that didn't burden or frighten the child. Emma, for her part, blossomed under the attention of having another adult in her life who cared about her. She would save up stories from school all week to share with Maria, and she took special pride in showing off new skills she had learned. One Sunday, Emma announced that she had learned to read a new book entirely by herself. She insisted on performing a dramatic reading for Maria and David, complete with different voices for different characters and exaggerated gestures for emphasis. That was a wonderful performance, Maria told her when she finished. You're becoming quite the storyteller. Emma beamed. Mrs. Patterson says I might be ready for first-grade reading books soon. She says I'm advanced for my age. That's because your daddy reads to you every night, Maria said. Reading to children is one of the most important things a parent can do. David looked pleased. I may not be able to give her everything I wish I could, but I can give her a love of learning and books. As the weeks passed, Maria began to feel like she was truly part of this small family. Emma would call her during the week sometimes, with David's permission, just to chat about her day or ask questions about things she was curious about. David would text Maria occasionally to share funny things Emma had said or to ask her opinion about parenting decisions he was facing. One evening, David called Maria after Emma's bedtime. I hope I'm not bothering you, he said, but I could really use some advice. Of course, Maria said. What's going on? Emma's class is having a mother-daughter tea party next week, and she's the only kid in her class without a mother figure to bring. I offered to go with her, but she says it's specifically for mothers and daughters. She's trying to be brave about it, but I can tell she's disappointed. Maria's heart ached for Emma. She remembered her own children having to navigate school events that assumed traditional family structures. What if I went with her? Maria suggested. I mean, if that would be appropriate. I'm not her mother, but I'm a woman who cares about her. David was quiet for a moment. Would you really do that? I mean, I know you're not obligated to. David, Maria interrupted gently. I would be honored to take Emma to her tea party. She's become very special to me. I think you might be her guardian angel, David said quietly. First the milk money, then the friendship, now this. I don't know what we did to deserve having you in our lives. You don't have to deserve kindness, Maria said. It's just something people should offer each other when they can. When Maria told Emma about the tea party plan during their next Sunday breakfast, Emma's reaction was explosive joy. Really? You'll really come with me? We can dress up fancy and drink tea from real teacups. We certainly can, Maria said. I'll even let you pick out what I should wear. Emma spent the rest of that morning planning their outfits and discussing what topics they would cover at the tea party. Her excitement was infectious, and Maria found herself looking forward to the event almost as much as Emma was. The tea party was held in Emma's classroom, which had been decorated with paper flowers and colorful tablecloths. Maria wore a navy blue dress that Emma had selected from her closet, and Emma wore her best dress with the braid that Maria had taught her to do herself. Watching Emma proudly introduce Miss Maria to her teacher and classmates, Maria felt a surge of emotion. This little girl, who had started as a stranger in a grocery store, had become genuinely important to her. She cared about Emma's happiness, her education, her confidence, and her future in ways that surprised her with their intensity. During the tea party, Maria met some of the other mothers and was struck by how naturally Emma fit into the group dynamic despite their unconventional family situation. Several mothers commented on how polite and articulate Emma was, and Mrs. Patterson pulled Maria aside to say what a positive influence she seemed to be having on Emma. Emma talks about you all the time, Mrs. Patterson said. It's clear that you care about her very much, and she feels very loved and supported. That makes such a difference for children. After the tea party, as they walked to David's car where he was waiting to pick them up, Emma slipped her small hand into Maria's. Thank you for being my pretend mom today, Emma said quietly. Maria squeezed her hand gently. Thank you for letting me be part of your special day. Miss Maria? Emma said as they reached the car. Yes, sweetheart. Do you think you could be like my grandma? I don't have any grandmas, and you don't have any grandkids here. Maybe we could be grandma and granddaughter? Maria stopped walking and knelt down to Emma's eye level. The question was so innocent and hopeful that it nearly took her breath away. I would love to be like your grandma, Maria said softly. Nothing would make me happier. Emma threw her arms around Maria's neck. Now I have a grandma. Daddy, did you hear? Miss Maria is going to be my grandma. David got out of the car with a huge smile on his face. I heard him. I think that's wonderful. Later that evening, after they had dropped Maria off at her apartment, and Emma was asleep, David called her. I hope Emma didn't put you on the spot with the grandma thing, he said. She's been talking about not having grandparents lately, and I think she's been trying to figure out how to solve that problem. She didn't put me on the spot at all, Maria assured him. I meant what I said. I would love to be like a grandmother to her. Good, David said, because I think she really needs that kind of relationship in her life. And honestly, I think you might need it too. Maria realized he was right. Since her children had grown up and moved away, she had been missing the experience of being needed, of having someone to nurture and guide and worry about. Emma filled that void in ways that felt natural and healing. I think this arrangement is going to benefit all of us, Maria said. Over the following weeks, Maria's role in Emma's life expanded naturally. She attended Emma's school play, helped her with a science project about butterflies, and taught her how to make cookies from scratch. David included her in decisions about Emma's activities and asked for her input on parenting challenges. More than that, Maria began to feel like she had a family again. Not the family she had raised and sent out into the world, but a different kind of family, one built on choice and affection rather than blood relation. One Sunday morning, as they were finishing breakfast and Emma was showing Maria a new book she had gotten from the library, David said something that crystallized what had been developing between them. You know, Maria, I keep thinking about that night at the grocery store when you helped us with the milk money. At the time, I thought you were just being kind to strangers. But now I realize you weren't helping strangers at all. Maria looked at him questioningly. You were helping family, David said simply. We just didn't know it yet. Emma looked up from her book. What does that mean, Daddy? David smiled at his daughter. It means that sometimes the people who are meant to be our family don't start out as our family. Sometimes they become our family because they choose to love us, and we choose to love them back. Like Miss Maria chose to love us. Emma asked. Exactly like that, David said. 6 months after that first encounter in the grocery store, Maria's life had transformed in ways she could never have imagined. What had started as a simple act of kindness had blossomed into the most meaningful relationship she had experienced since her own children were young. The Sunday morning tradition had expanded beyond pancakes. Sometimes they would go to the park after breakfast, where Maria would push Emma on the swings, and David would teach her to throw a baseball. Other times they would visit the library, where Emma would check out armfuls of books, and Maria would help her practice reading the more challenging ones. During the week, Maria had become an integral part of their daily routine. She picked Emma up from school on the days when David had to work late, helped with homework at the kitchen table, and had even been given her own key to the apartment for emergencies. But the most significant change wasn't in their routines. It was in how they all felt about themselves and their place in the world. Emma had gained confidence from having another adult who believed in her and supported her dreams. David had found relief from the isolation of single parenthood and had someone to share both the challenges and joys of raising his daughter. And Maria had rediscovered the purpose and fulfillment that came from being needed and loved. One Thursday evening in late autumn, Maria was helping Emma with her math homework when David came home from work looking unusually excited. "You two look like you're working hard," he said, kissing Emma on the top of her head and squeezing Maria's shoulder affectionately. "Miss Maria is helping me with subtraction," Emma reported. "She makes it easier to understand than my teacher does." "That's because Miss Maria is very smart," David said. "Speaking of which, I have some news to share with both of you." Emma looked up from her worksheet with interest. "Good news or bad news?" "Very good news," David said, sitting down at the table with them. "I got a promotion at work. Starting next month, I'll be the assistant manager of the inventory department." Emma clapped her hands excitedly, though Maria suspected she didn't fully understand what a promotion meant. Maria, however, understood immediately the significance of this development. "David, that's wonderful," she said. "You've been working so hard. You deserve this." "It means more money," David explained to Emma, "which means we can afford some things we've been wanting. And it means Daddy has job security, which is very important." Emma considered this seriously. "Does it mean we can get chocolate milk sometimes instead of just regular milk?" David laughed. "Yes, sweetheart. It definitely means we can get chocolate milk sometimes. And maybe we can get the cereal with the marshmallows?" "Maybe we can get the cereal with the marshmallows." Emma seemed satisfied with these developments. "Can Miss Maria have chocolate milk with us too?" "Of course," David said. "Miss Maria is part of our family. She gets whatever we get." Later that evening, after Emma was in bed, David and Maria talked more seriously about what the promotion would mean for their family. "It's not just about the money, although that will definitely help," David said as they sat on the couch drinking coffee. "It's about finally feeling like I'm building something instead of just surviving day to day." Maria nodded understandingly. "I remember that feeling. When I finally got steady work with the cleaning company instead of just picking up random jobs, it felt like I could breathe for the first time in years." "Exactly. And I have to say, having you in our lives has made such a difference in how I feel about everything. Knowing that Emma has someone else who loves her and looks out for her, it takes some of the pressure off. I don't feel like I'm carrying everything alone anymore." Maria felt a warmth spread through her chest. "I feel the same way. Having you and Emma in my life has given me purpose again. I was just going through the motions before, working and coming home to an empty apartment. Now I have people to care about, things to look forward to." David smiled. "Emma asked me the other day if you were going to live with us forever. I told her that was up to you, but I hoped so." "What did she say to that?" "She said she thought you probably would because families are supposed to stay together." Maria felt tears prick her eyes. "She's a wise little girl." "She is. And she's right about families staying together. I know we didn't start out as a traditional family, but I can't imagine our lives without you now." "Neither can I," Maria admitted. "You two have become the most important people in my world." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, both reflecting on how much their lives had changed since that night in the grocery store. "I have something I want to talk to you about," David said eventually. With the promotion and the raise, I'm going to be able to afford a bigger apartment. 2 bedrooms, maybe even with a small yard for Emma to play in. Maria felt a pang of something that might have been sadness. That sounds wonderful. Emma would love having more space. David looked at her carefully. I was wondering if you might want to consider moving with us. We could find a place with 3 bedrooms. And you could have your own space, but still be part of our daily lives. Maria stared at him in surprise. You want me to live with you? I know it might seem unconventional, David said quickly. But it makes sense, doesn't it? You're here most days anyway. Emma adores you. I trust you completely. And, frankly, I think we all function better as a family unit than we do separately. Maria felt her heart racing. The idea of living with David and Emma, of truly being part of a family again, was both thrilling and terrifying. What would people think, she asked. A single black woman living with a single white father and his daughter? David looked at her seriously. I think people who matter will see what I see. A family that loves and supports each other. People who don't matter, well, their opinions don't matter. And Emma? Have you talked to her about this? Not specifically, but she's made it clear that she wants you to be a permanent part of our lives. Last week she asked me if you could come to parent-teacher conferences with us because she wanted Mrs. Patterson to meet her grandma. Maria felt the tears that had been threatening finally spill over. She really said that? She really did. And when Mrs. Patterson asked who would be coming to the conference, Emma said my dad and my grandma Maria. Like it was the most natural thing in the world. Maria wiped her eyes and tried to imagine what it would be like to wake up every morning in a house with people who loved her, to help Emma get ready for school every day, to share daily meals and conversations and the ordinary moments that made up a family's life. I would need to think about it, she said finally. It's a big decision. Of course, David said. Take all the time you need. Just know that from our perspective, it would be a dream come true. Over the next few days, Maria found herself imagining what life would be like as a full-time member of David and Emma's family. She thought about the practical aspects, sharing household expenses and responsibilities, having her own bedroom and space, being able to help with Emma's daily care without having to coordinate schedules. But more than the practical considerations, she thought about the emotional aspects. She thought about being there for Emma's bedtime stories every night, about helping David navigate the challenges of parenting a growing child, about having people to come home to every day instead of an empty apartment. She also thought about her own children and what they would think about this arrangement. When she called Marcus, her oldest, to discuss the situation, his response surprised her. Mom, you sound happier than you've sounded in years when you talk about David and Emma, he said. Keisha and I have been worried about you being lonely since we all moved away. If these people make you feel loved and needed, then I think you should absolutely consider moving in with them. But what will people think? Maria asked. It's not exactly conventional. Marcus laughed. Mom, you raised 3 successful kids as a single mother while working multiple jobs. You're the strongest person I know. Since when do you care what people think about your unconventional choices? When Maria talked to Keisha and Jamal, they echoed Marcus's sentiments. All 3 of her children encouraged her to pursue the living arrangement that would make her happiest. You deserve to have family around you, Keisha said. It doesn't matter if it's the family you were born with, the family you created, or the family you chose. Family is family. After a week of consideration, Maria made her decision. On the following Sunday morning, over their usual pancake breakfast, she told David and Emma that she would love to move in with them. Emma's reaction was immediate and enthusiastic. Really? You're going to live with us forever and ever? Well, maybe not forever and ever, Maria said with a laugh, but for as long as you'll have me. Emma threw herself into Maria's arms. This is the best day of my whole life. David's smile was quieter, but no less genuine. Thank you, he said simply. Thank you for choosing us. Thank you for choosing me, Maria replied. 2 months later, they moved into a small 3-bedroom house with a fenced yard and a front porch. Maria's bedroom was on the first floor, with its own bathroom and a reading nook by the window. Emma's room was upstairs, painted purple at her request, with built-in shelves for her growing collection of books. David's room was also up. Emma nodded, as if this made perfect sense to her. I'm glad she chose us. We're a good family. Maria felt tears welling up in her eyes. Yes, she said quietly. We're a very good family. Looking around the small apartment that had become a second home to her, at the man who had become like a son, and the little girl who had become like a granddaughter, Maria marveled at how dramatically her life had changed from a simple act of kindness in a grocery store. She had given 37 cents to a stranger who needed help buying milk. In return, she had received a family, a purpose, and a happiness she hadn't known she was missing. It was, she reflected, the best investment she had ever made. David shook Maria's hand at the door. Thank you for coming, he said. And thank you for everything. For helping us Thursday night, for coming today, for being so wonderful with Emma. You've given us both something we didn't even realize we were missing. Maria felt tears prick her eyes. I think you've given me something I didn't realize I was missing too, she said softly. Walking back to the bus stop, Maria felt lighter than she had in months. She had somewhere to be next Sunday, people who were looking forward to seeing her, a little girl who wanted her to braid her hair. She had stumbled into a friendship that felt natural and easy and mutually beneficial. Sometimes, she reflected, the most beautiful relationships grew from the smallest seeds. A 37-cent gesture of kindness had blossomed into something that was enriching all of their lives. As the bus pulled up to take her home, Maria was already looking forward to next Sunday's pancakes and wondering what other surprises this new friendship might bring. As she finished her work and prepared to leave the store, Maria realized that Thursday night's encounter with David hadn't been the end of a story. It had been the beginning of one. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness open doors to relationships and experiences you never could have imagined. Walking to the bus stop, Maria found herself smiling. Tomorrow would bring pancakes and conversation and the chance to spend time with people who seemed to genuinely want her company. It had been a long time since she had something to look forward to on a Sunday morning. She thought about Emma's excitement and David's genuine warmth, and she felt grateful for whatever force in the universe had put her in that grocery store at exactly the right moment to help someone who needed it. Sometimes being in the right place at the right time wasn't just about helping someone else. Sometimes it was about opening yourself up to receiving something wonderful in return. As the bus pulled up to take her home, Maria was already planning what she would wear to breakfast and wondering what stories David and Emma would share over pancakes. Life, she reflected, had a way of surprising you when you least expected it. But Maria also understood the delicate balance of helping without intruding, of offering support without damaging someone's pride. She had been the recipient of both kinds of help, and she knew the difference between kindness that lifted you up and charity that made you feel small. As she gathered her cleaning supplies and prepared to head home to her own small apartment, Maria made a mental note to pay attention during her future shifts at the grocery store. If David came back, and something told her he would, she wanted to be ready to offer more than just pocket change. Because sometimes, the most important thing you can give someone isn't money or food or material help. Sometimes, the most important thing you can give someone is the knowledge that they're not alone, that someone else understands their struggle, and that there are people in the world who care about what happens to them. Maria Williams had been giving that gift to people for most of her life, often without realizing it. But tonight, with David Chun and his quart of milk, she was beginning to understand just how powerful that gift could be.